party. And
Okay.
Here we are, yay.
Going? Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone.
Sorry, I'm just taking it and then I will start it. Or there we go. Okay. Thanks, Carrie. Good morning and welcome, everyone. This is a class on raising healthy kids. Whoop, turn that off. My name is Karri Tidwell, and I'm honored and happy to lead this class with 3 other regenerative detox specialists. And for those of you who don't know what regenerative detox specialist is, it's really helping the body get into the right condition to heal itself. And we have a huge passion for sharing this regenerative health with you. And we've all had our own healing.
I know.
I was like, oh, look at that. So we've all had our own healing stories.
Sorry.
No worries. How this has helped our own life, and then in turn we want to use this awareness to create healthy kids so they don't have to do all the deep regenerative work that we've had to do. And if we can start them off on a young age, they won't have to suffer with all the symptoms that are presenting now. And I'm going to be sharing my story on the difference of my 2-year-old versus my 2-year-old. And then just to show you an example of the difference of awareness that I had. And I believe our parents do the best that they know how with the knowledge they have. And back then, my parents didn't really understand, why I had so many ear infections and why the certain symptoms were presenting. And a lot of times what we think is normal is just common. And so I grew up and I suffered with chronic ear infections, and I had to take antibiotics. And I just want to slow down and share more of what is an antibiotic. And when you break down the word antibiotic, anti means against and biotic means life. And so when you're taking something that's against life, you're killing off all of the good bacteria. And we really need that good gut microbiome and the good healthy bacteria. And a lot more people are aware of this now. And so I grew up taking what's against life, the antibiotics, a lot in my childhood. And I ended up having to get tubes in my ears, but I still ended up getting ear infections. And so we're conditioned to think when we have a symptom, we go to the doctor, we get it treated. They either give you medication to suppress it or surgeries, or we do these things, and we're really not taught about why is that happening in the first place. And so there's a question whenever your child or you are sick is to always ask why is this happening? Why was I getting ear infections all the time? And it's not the bacteria or the virus that's the problem. It was the terrain that I created that unconsciously I didn't know of, that was inviting more bacteria to overgrow and then cause that infection. And so if my parents knew to help clean the body out versus just treat it with antibiotics, that would have set me up for not suffering with so many other health conditions as I got older. And another thing I recently learned, and I know the lady touching on this in more detail, is the glyphosate. Glyphosate is the ingredient that's in Roundup, and that's sprayed all over our food and all over our parks. And one of the highest products that has glyphosate in it is Cheerios. And I grew up eating tons of cereal. And so I was eating tons of glyphosate, which is actually patented as an antibiotic. So I was eating a lot of that with milks and more mucus forming and congesting foods, creating a really good environment for my body to have more congestion and for those bacteria to thrive in that environment. And that's why I was getting all of the ear infections. And so naturally, I didn't want my kids to suffer with ear infections. So I decided to raise them in a different way and not give them these congesting, mucus forming foods, and really understanding the whole glyphosate thing. And when I had my daughter, I didn't realize that about Cheerios was one of the highest levels of glyphosate was in it. And so I was thinking I was doing something good by giving her something that said heart healthy on the label. And she was it was easy for her to pick up. So I thought it was a good thing for her to have. And so I was giving her that stuff, and I didn't realize why she was congested all the time, and I didn't have the awareness I have now about the dairy, and but I did know how to help with ear infections in a natural way. So that was one thing. She didn't grow up with per se antibiotics, but she grew up eating foods that had antibiotics in it. So one really important thing is to know where our food comes from. Ideally, it's best to grow your own stuff, but not everybody can do that. But if you can, it's always nice to like teach your kids where their food comes from, so they can have that connection with the food in a healthy way and know that it's not sprayed and all of that. But backing up, when I had my daughter 14 years ago and I didn't have this awareness, I wanted to do what was healthy for her. And I was taught, you know, nursing is the healthiest thing to do. And so I was really inspired to nurse, even though it was really painful and hard. I stuck through it, but I didn't have the connection of what I ate directly affected her. And so she ended up getting baby acne, and everyone said it was normal. I now know that it was something I was eating that was causing her to have that. And she also used to cry for no reason. And I don't believe babies cry for no reason. They cry for a reason. And I didn't connect the dots of it was something that I was eating that was affecting her and not making her feel well. And so fast forward, 12 years later, I have a 2-year-old son. And I can tell immediately if I fell off and had something I normally don't, he would get congested. And I could literally turn on and off his congestion by what I ate when I was nursing him. And so having that awareness of like right when we start nursing our kids makes a huge difference on their health. So we can start congesting their lymphatic system right away, or just really helping that help nourish them in the best way that we can. So just having that awareness piece of what we're taking in really affects our kids. So starting from, well, we did a class on this about preparing your body for being pregnant. And so we touched on that in the last class, but moving forward now, nursing. And then when you start to introduce foods to your child, it's really easy to make your own purees of things to help make your own baby food. And kids really, we thrive on simplicity. And so you can mash up a banana or avocado or puree mangoes, different things like that, and just feed your baby like that starting out, and knowing where it comes from, making sure it's not sprayed, and is really helpful. So they're getting less exposure to the antibiotic as much as possible. And so I choose to feed my son different than probably a lot of people. And what is really helpful when you start to learn this type of information and want your kids' lymphatic system and immune health to be flowing, and you understand certain foods cause congestion in the body, it's helpful to have, your community and support on board. And so I shared with my family and my mom, I really want to feed him this way because I understand the body and I don't want to cause more congestion than I need to. And I'm going to share a story that that just explains how food really affects our kids. And so I was at an aunt's house, and she didn't know I don't feed my son a certain thing. And she ended up feeding him cheese, and he had never had cheese before. And my cousin right away noticed it and stopped, but there's nothing I could do. He had already eaten it. And right away, as we were on our way home, he started to get congested, and he was like, "Mom, my nose," and he couldn't breathe very good. And he's never congested unless he's eating something new and I notice it's not good for him, I stop. Just like how some people do the elimination diet, reintroduce a food, they realize they have a reaction. He's kind of like at that now, like I don't introduce certain things I know will be harmful for him. And so on our way home, he started to get congested, and he ended up getting a slight fever that night. And I knew it was his body just trying to kick this out of his system. And he ended up the next day getting a higher fever. It was up to like 104.4. And most people would be like scared and run to the hospital thinking like, oh my gosh, I have to stop this. And I knew it was just his body trying to kick this foreign protein out so it could allow his body to heal itself. And so I gave him certain herbs and food to help like push that out instead of stop or suppress it. Anytime we have a fever, it's our body's way of like trying to kill the bad bacteria naturally to to give our body the best condition to heal. And so I knew what to do as far as helping his body process that. And so using food as medicine with certain fruits to really help hydrate, and herbs to help get the congestion out. And then his attitude was different that whole week. I pulled a couple all-nighters. So like just seeing how one thing can really affect the body. And then if we keep doing that over years, how that mucus and congestion can create more dehydration in the body. And, it can cause cysts, tumors, different things if we continue to force that congestion in and don't help expectorate that out. So that's just one little example of what has happened with my son and why I choose not to feed him certain mucus forming foods. And a few of the highest mucus forming foods are dairy, processed meats, sugars, mostly processed foods. And we can be fooled by marketing. And so I've had clients that are like, I gave my kid this milk because it said it was good for their brain. It had DHEA and it was chocolate milk. My daughter showed me a package that it was cheddar sun chips that said heart healthy on it. There's nothing heart healthy about cheddar sun chips. And so just trying and being aware of like how marketing can really skew our thoughts on health. And so if we can just focus on adding in more fresh, real whole foods, this can like crowd out some of the processed stuff. And so if you're just starting out and your kid is used to eating a certain way, you can start by adding in fresh produce. I always find it interesting when you go to a restaurant and you look at the kids menu and it's like chicken fingers and mac and cheese, and we think this is like normal kids food because they want more bland or simple things. But it's actually more kids want more high. If you're to put like a bunch of fruit on a table and a bunch of vegetables, like the kids are going to go to the high, the colorful foods. And so another thing that is helpful is to like pack your food before you go somewhere and always have like fresh foods on hand. And this can be really helpful for moving forward with keeping your kids on track to keep them as healthy as possible. And if you already have a child and they're used to eating certain ways, I start to connect the dots. So like with my daughter, since I didn't have her started on the path that I had my son on, I educate her and connect the dots. If she's not feeling well, if she gets a headache, to really like, what did you have that day? To really start to correlate, stomach problems or digestive things from what she is eating. So that way, when she leaves the home, she's empowered to make those choices to help with her own health and give her body the best condition as she moves forward. And so I wanted to, I can go on and on about this subject, but I want to give the other ladies their turn to talk, but just really empower you to start to connect the dots with your kids' health. If they're presenting symptoms, always ask why and get to the root of it. Another thing, we will be raffling off, I forgot to mention this at the beginning. So for those of you who are on the Zoom call, we'll be raffling off a superfood blend that's grown in regenerative soil that has over 12 servings of fruits and vegetables in it, and it helps actually get glyphosate out of the body. So stay till the end and we'll be raffling that off. But really just, I hope that this class really helps empower you to understand using more food as medicine and really helping understand certain elements with your child to help give them the best condition for them and our future generations. So thank you, and I will pass it along to you, Mary Beth.
Great, thank you so much, Carrie. That was so much great information. And like Carrie said, my name is Mary Beth Flemming. And I have two children, a almost 3-year-old and 7-month-old. And in my past, I've worked a lot with kids. I've organized programs doing healthy cooking classes for kids. I've traveled the world creating organic garden programs for kids. I've led a lot of creative art classes with kids. And the reason I'm so passionate about this subject is because of this idea of epigenetics. And basically what epigenetics states is that we can turn on and off certain genes, certain dis-ease genes and the like, based on the foods that we're eating and based on the thoughts that we're thinking and based on the energies we're consuming. And one area of study that all of us on this call are super passionate about is iridology, where you can actually take a picture of the eye and see how the body changes over time given the foods we're consuming. And one thing I've done with my mom is we've taken pictures with her eyes, and you can actually see the genetic weaknesses that are passed down. We have a genetic weakness in our parathyroid in our family, as well as our kidneys and adrenals. And my goal was to see that change for my children, because we really can alter genetics in just one generation. And it's amazing. We take these pictures of our eyes frequently, after a year or two. And it's amazing to see the changes that can actually happen when we really nourish our body on a cellular level. And so my goal with my children is to see their genes strengthen for the next generations and so forth, because something that we're coming across, which is kind of scary these days, is we're seeing our genetic lines be extremely weakened. And the reason being is because of all these pesticides and chemicals in our foods, and the glyphosate, among, the environmental toxins, and just a lot of influences that are coming about in our society. So I'm like on this mission with these ladies to really see our cellular health regenerate with each generation. And so that being said, I just wanted to share with you guys some of the things that I do with my family to try to influence this cellular regeneration and just healthy living and lifestyle. So first and foremost, one of the things that I think is so important for children and adults is getting kids to play in the dirt. Getting kids connected to the soil, because the soil is the root of all life. And when our soil is healthy, our plants are healthy and we're healthy. And the more kids can dig in there and play in there, the more connection to the natural world that they have, the more they're going to develop an appreciation for food. Gardening, if you're able to have a garden, or maybe you have a community garden, or maybe even just a windowsill garden. Some of the funnest projects I've done with my kids is growing sprouts, and having my kids see the seed and then see it as it grows. This really creates an appreciation for food and a deeper knowledge and connection to food, so that sometimes you'll notice, like my son, he's almost 3, he'll be like, why is that in a package? Or he'll start to question things because he's used to seeing whole, real food growing. On that same note, lots of nature and sunshine, especially for our children's immune system. When we're out in our environments, we're actually absorbing the biota around us, which actually strengthens our gut microbiome, and it influences our immune system to be stronger. And so being out in the sunshine, jumping in the rivers, jumping in the lakes, playing in nature is a crucial component of what I instill in my children for keeping themselves healthy, mentally, emotionally, and just in their soul as well. One of my favorite quotes from Dr. Robert Morse, who we all have studied with, is stay close to nature and keep it simple. So when I'm thinking about raising my kids, I'm always thinking of this phrase, like stay close to nature, or what would nature do, and keep it simple. When we're in nature, it really initiates our natural instincts and our natural knowing and our natural understanding that we're all connected. And I think when we get this understanding that we're all connected, it's very clear how important it is to take care of ourselves, because by taking care of ourselves, we're taking care of the collective. So that's one thing that nature can really instill in our children. And then kind of moving from outside to inside the home, one thing that all of us do, my kids and myself and my husband, is we always do fruit first before anything else we consume. Like if we wake up from a nap or we're going to have a snack, even if we're going to eat something else, we always go for the fruit first. And the reason being is fruit is one of the best brain foods for our bodies. And it's also one of the best foods for our nervous system. And our body is basically an electrical system. And when we feed it the electrical energy it needs, then we are hydrated, we're oxygenated. Our cells get deeply nourished. So that's a rule of thumb around our house, is fruit first. If my son wakes up wanting something else, I say, well, which fruit would you like to have first? And it's just a habitual pattern of us all. Like Carrie was saying, it's really important to always be packing, if you're going to go out on the road, make sure you've got an apple or an orange or some kind of fruit, some berries to bring with you, so that you can just instill in your children that fruit really is medicine, because it is. And when we start with that, we can really nourish on a deep cellular level. And then another phrase that we use around our house is, when in doubt, drink a green shake. So sometimes we'll be out and about, and my son will see a kid drinking a soda pop, and he'll be like, Mom, what's that? And I'm like, I'll explain to him what it is, but I tell him how lucky we are to have our green shakes. And as Carrie was saying, we're going to be raffling off one of these amazing regenerative superfood shakes that I always offer to my children, because it's deeply mineralizing and it's deep in micronutrients and phytonutrients, which are feeding our children's immune system and feeding our children's brains. So that's a phrase, like if we've had our fruit, we don't know what else to eat, my kid's wanting something else, we just say, when in doubt, drink a green shake. So we have great resources for kids shakes. If you guys are wanting some more information on that, we'll send some information in our follow-up email. But green shakes are an amazing thing to have on hand. You could mix them with, nut milks or coconut water and just really know that your child is being nourished on that level. And the other thing that we instill in our family is the kids just eat what we're eating. I'm with Carrie that I think it's kind of insane that every restaurant you go to, it's the same menu plan for kids, and it's the same congestive foods. None of them are that deeply nourishing. And so one thing that we really instilled with my kids is they just eat what we're eating. We don't often do like, hey, would you like this? Would you like that? Give them a ton of choices. We're just like, here's this amazing food that we're all eating as a family, and we all eat together. And my 3-year-old now is just normal. He doesn't know that there's a kids menu. He just knows he's eating what we're eating. And in that way, it keeps it really simple. And you don't have to be wasting a lot of time trying to figure out what family member is eating what. We're all just eating these whole foods healthy together. And it's a really great habit to get in from the get-go. And one way to do that is to cook with your kids. I think cooking with our kids is one of the best ways to instill healthy habits. I always involve my children in the cooking process. Even my 7-month-old, I put him right where we're, in a chair, right where we're cooking, and, just let him feel the foods, let him smell the foods, let him get really involved in the process. One of the most fun things we like to do is make nut milks and get the blender out and squeeze the pulp out. And my son just plays with it like Play-Doh. And we just have like a lot of fun cooking. So I would really encourage you guys, if you don't cook much with your kids, try to find a way to involve them in the process, and that'll get them excited about whole foods. That'll get them in that creative state and that creative flow for eating and having fun when eating. And the main key component, I would say, for our children's immune systems, for our children's emotions, is staying away from processed sugars. So it really messes with our blood sugars, it messes with our teeth, our brain function, our hormones, and there's actually a lot of psychology around why candy is so colorful. And I'm glad Carrie brought this in. Back in the day when we were hunters and gatherers, it was our natural instinct to look for colorful food, because that means, oh, a flower has come and there's going to be fruit there. And so the candy industry has used that psychology to make colorful candy so that our biological system says, ooh, look at that shiny, bright food. That must be, food that we want. And so there is a lot of psychology behind the marketing that goes into play. So if you can just exchange fruit for candy, and it has the same colorful look to it and even a better taste and appeal, you're going to be doing your kids a huge favor and yourself in the long run. Just your own, the ups and downs that sugar create can be really taxing on the parents as well. And one other component that I think is very important to bring in here is teaching our children to use their breath, especially in regulation and controlling their own emotions. One thing we really instill in my son is whenever he's, having an outburst or just feeling emotional, is just to go back to his breath. And I always ask my son, Faya, are you breathing? Can you please take a deep, deep breath? And in doing this, you're bringing oxygen to the brain, and you're actually bringing oxygen to your cells and creating more space and nourishment. So that is something I really think is so important. It's such a simple thing, but I often think we all forget how powerful and impactful the breath can be in our own lives, and then in our children's lives as well. And then on more of like a a soulful level, I feel like some of the things that I really try to instill with my children for this healthy living and longevitous lifestyle is real free expression of thoughts and their feelings and their observations. And this is why it's so fun to cook with our kids, because I can ask them, like, what do you think about the texture of that? What does that smell like? How do you think that was made? You know, and instilling in our kids that natural inquisitivity is the root of imagination is really, really important. And it really helps our kids to develop this intellectual capacity and learn how to ask open-ended questions as parents, because that allows our kids, you know, the ability to feel like they're being listened to, and then also have healthy communication and provide healthy outlets for kids to really express themselves. One other thing I like to do, I know there's so many people out there homeschooling right now, and sometimes as busy parents, we can get into the habit of like setting up stations or setting up projects for our kids to do. And one of the things that I love to do, I learned this when I taught at a Waldorf school, was, you know, really encourage your kids to come up with their own projects. For instance, if you're going to do a art project at home, why not go on a walk and pick out all the supplies for the art projects? You know, get your kids to really cultivate that independence, and allow them to know that they can be solution oriented and problem solvers, and find ways to have fun and make up projects for themselves that create new possibilities for them. I think that another tip with the homeschooling is, you know, embrace boredom. I think one thing that is really important for our children is to actually feel that boredom sometime and know that they have the ability to overcome that and get creative and find their own solutions to do things. In this fast-paced world, we're constantly, you know, always just like, it's this thing and this thing, and we got to do this and this. But if we can learn to embrace boredom as parents as well, if we ever get a chance to do that, you know, it really allows us to have a new perspective on how to look at things and how to really cultivate our inner self-esteem to find solutions for ourselves. So those are kind of more of the psychological healthy living and healthy tips that I've come up with. But ultimately, you know, the main goal, I would say, with parenting and with eating the food and with educating and with all of it is just being in that nurturing and supportive nature and having that loving foundation for our kids, and letting our children know that when you're feeding yourself whole, real food, you are loving yourself and you are loving the earth. And when we're playing in the garden, you are loving the earth. And I think that's something that we all really need more of, is just that massive collective love. And something really kind of astonishing that I learned the other day is that less than 1% of the food in America is considered real food. And it wasn't like this. I mean, nearly 100 years ago, they weren't using any chemical pesticides or fertilizers on food. Everything was real food grown in back home gardens. And as we've introduced massive antibiotics like glyphosate, less than 1% of the food we consume in America is considered real food. Even food deserts, they're not considered a food desert if they have a grocery store or a gas station that has potato chips in it. Even though those potato chips have been altered and heated and processed in so many different ways, and most likely those nutrients aren't even intact, it's still considered a vegetable. So this is really important and alarming to know as parents, that we really have to seek out that nourishment for our kids on a psychological level, on an emotional level, and on a physical level, to really feed our children the best we can so that we can allow them to be their best selves. And I know that as a parent as well, when I'm not taking good enough care for myself, I'm not acting at my best ability. And there's nothing more than any of us want for our children, I know, than to see them just thriving in their best selves. And nutrition is one of the fundamental ways to achieve that. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. And I'm going to pass it off to Carrie Drinkwine. Thank you.
Thanks so much, ladies. That was amazing. So much good info. And I really am just going to kind of echo what they've been saying, but really I want to bring some reality into it and some like real numbers and some real things that you can really look for in your kids. And if you can just make sure that you're muted, that would be awesome, just because I'm Let me just check there we go. I got it. Okay. So my childhood disease was asthma. So I had terrible chronic asthma, which turned into bronchitis and bronchial infections, pneumonia, lots of hospitalizations. And I think we have some pretty staggering statistics around it. So what I first want to cover is signs that your child is having an imbalance. Because it's easy for us to go to the doctor and get diagnosed with like an ear infection or get diagnosed with asthma, but there's all these subtle signs that there's an imbalance in the body that we may not understand. And most of these are behavioral. And so the imbalances in the body really come from a poor gut biome because the gut controls the nervous system. And I won't get into that, but the gut is where all the neurotransmitters are created. It's where your hormones are created. So when that's out of balance, the child is out of balance. And so a lot of signs that they're having an imbalance will be like rosy cheeks. Rosacea is a huge one. That shows that they have like hypoxic injury in the gut and there's a glyphosate toxicity in the body. And glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup. It's on all your non-organic foods. Unfortunately, it's on our public parks. We'll get to that too. But that's one thing, like rosy cheeks. If your child has a distended and hard belly, that's another sign of like severe belly bloat, candida overgrowth, some pesticide toxicity in their body. They'll have stomach aches a lot. Headaches are not natural at all. Headaches are a sign that your brain is swelling. So these are things that we really want to be listening to our children if they are explaining this to us, because kids are good at just telling us what they feel, right? So really listening to our children and knowing that these aren't just flukes. Like we've gotten used to a headache as an adult, but I haven't had a headache in years unless I've had like a glass of wine or something, right? Then my body immediately tells me that was not good for me. I don't feel good. Behavioral signs that the child's adrenal glands are struggling are basically bouts of rage or anger or frustration. The child not being able to like properly express their emotions is a sign that their gut biome is down and their nervous system is not communicating properly. And they literally, in the eyes, you can see this as an erratic autonomic nerve wreath, but their body, they really can't cope. So that's one of them. I'm just going to take a peek at my notes. I have so many. Like I mentioned, pain like stomach aches and headaches, crying and difficulty managing emotions, the desire to control people and events. If you seem like you have a really controlling child, it's an adrenal weakness most of the time. Difficulty sleeping is related to the pineal gland, which is all connected in with the health of the pituitary and the adrenal. Having high expectations for themselves, like being really hard on themselves, is a sign of adrenal weakness. It's an overcompensation. It's an anxiety. Struggle to pay attention and focus is a lot with their processing. So if their nervous system is out of whack, they won't be able to focus or process information. Over planning situations and events, feeling worried a lot, like, oh, I'm worried about my friend, or, just like random worries that don't seem to make sense. That's early onset signs of anxiety. And then avoiding any activities or social events, and feeling angry or frustration. So those are some of the typical signs that we kind of hack up to like, oh, it's just they're kids. And it's not, that's not the reality. They're very unbalanced kids. And so we can help them through healing their gut biome. And that's one of my most passionate things. And I'm going to share my screen with you because I did a ton of research and there's no way my brain will remember it all, but I wanted to tell you a couple statistics. And the first one is that 1.5 million people a year get diagnosed with diabetes in the United States. Every year, 1.5 million people. And right now, 1 in 36 children have autism. And in 1970, it was 1 in 6,000 children. So at the rate we are moving, we will have, I believe the statistics are, and Rita, correct me if I'm wrong, is in like the next 20 years, it'll be like 1 in 4 children. And we don't even have that level of infrastructure to support that. Like the amount of money, the amount of people, human power it takes to take care of a disabled child. If any of you have a disabled child, you know how much work and how exhausting it is. We cannot go here as a human species. We just can't. So I'm going to bring a little bit of reality to what we're experiencing. So I just really want to show, let me see. Hold on 1 second, I got to move this over. Okay. Let's see, that didn't pull up properly. So I'm gonna actually go to this one and I will, can you guys all see that? Okay. So before I go into the statistics, I'm going to go into the foods that are the most unsafe for our babies. So Roundup, as we know, is the active ingredient in a lot of our food, our city parks, our air, our water. Karri Tidwell mentioned Cheerios and Oreos, but here's a complete list for you. And I shouldn't say complete because there are loads of brands with toxins, but here's an agriculture, and this is in 1992. So this is an old chart, but this is like where the glyphosate was been. That one's 1992, and here's 2014. So just 6 years ago, you can see as it's gotten to dangerous levels. Glyphosate, because it's a water-soluble molecule and you can't take it out, we have to keep raising the levels of which we deem allowed and safe and legal. And so even California, that has like really tough regulations, they have to keep increasing their parts per million that they allow for glyphosate because they can't extract this toxic substance from the water or from the environment. So we have to do something, you guys. Here's some of the biggest brands, and it'll show you the parts per billion. Cheerios, Honey Nut Cheerios, Wheaties, Trix, Annie's, gluten-free cookies, Kellogg's. By the way, Kellogg's has decided to go glyphosate free, but they're not doing it for 5 years, or 2023, I believe, excuse me. So for 3 more years, they're going to pesticide farm, and then they're going to switch over. So glad they're switching. Wish they could do it quicker, right? But yeah, so that's one. And then Raisin Bran, Kashi, Special K, Frosted Flakes, Cheez-Its, Ritz, Triscuits, Oreos, Stacy's brand, Lay's, Doritos, Fritos, Goldfish, favorite childhood snack, Little Debbie's, Lucy's, 365, Back to Nature. And then this just is a beautiful article that's written actually by the Million Mom Movement. So we can attach this in our follow-up email. If you did not get registered for this class and you want this document, please find our Eventbrite link or send us your email so that you can get this list. Now I'm just going to go directly into my Gmail and grab my document that I created for today. And let's see. Okay, are you guys seeing Google Docs? Okay, beautiful. Just making sure everything's working. Okay, so here we have childhood statistics. And I included some links on here, but according to the Center for Disease Control Prevention, 1 in 13 people have asthma. And so 1 in 12 are children, and more than 25 million Americans have asthma, which is 7.7% of adults and 8.4% of children. It's been increasing since the early 1980s in all ages and all sexes and racial groups, but asthma is more common among adult women than adult men, but African Americans seem to struggle with this even more. And so I want to create a lens around that this is not according to our genetic weaknesses. This is according to the environments that we put African American culture in. So this is their proximity to fields that spray, their air quality, their pollution levels where they live. And so this is a very hot topic. If you watch What the Health, you'll see where some of the poorest neighborhoods are right next to the highest spray fields. And in a way, it's a large form of institutionalized racism. And we really have to create a change for this. Moving on, more than 11.4 million people with asthma, including more than 3 million children, report having 1 or more episodes of asthma attacks in 2017. It's the leading chronic disease in children. Now, I want to explain something about asthma. Asthma is simply a couple of things. One, it's a kidney weakness. So when the kidneys are not filtering waste out properly in the lymph, the lungs are brilliant. They take over, they act like spongy tissue, and they actually start to sop up some of the mess. And so you'll get a lot of mucus that's trying to be discharged out of your cough. But the second reason is actually a nervous system weakness. So asthma is in the COPD family, and a lot of people don't realize that. So this is early onset COPD, which is a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So we have to pay attention. And what COPDs are neurological disorders. And people don't understand that connection. So it's not only cleaning up the mess, but it's a neurological disorder because the adrenal glands control the function of the autonomic nervous system. So the dilation of the blood capillaries to the lungs, the amount of constriction and flow that's happening in the lungs and in the blood vessels. So when we have a constriction here and the body can't open it up in an attack, is a sign of a nervous system weakness, that the adrenals are down and they are not doing their job properly. So pay attention. We just pop kids a little inhaler. Here you go, take your inhaler, which is steroids. And those steroids are suppressing their adrenal function even deeper and causing more problems. When we have a failed adrenal gland, we are in a state to allow anything is fair game. Autoimmune, cancer, asthma, you name it. When the adrenals go down, the health of the person goes down, adult or child. So I won't go through all this, but basically I want to give you a little statistics around the money and how this affects us. Asthma accounted for 9.8 million doctor's visits, 188,968 discharges from the hospital, 1.8 million emergency department visits every year. Every year. African Americans are 3 times more likely to be hospitalized from asthma. And this is due to their exposure and in their environments. And then this just talks about the annual economic cost of asthma. So we're just taking one chronic disease, and the economic cost of asthma is $81.9 billion. $81.9 billion. That is insane. $3 billion in losses due to missed work and school days, $29 billion due to asthma-related mortality, and $50.3 billion in medical costs. The annual person per incremental medical period of asthma was $3,266 annual per person from asthma every year. That's staggering, you guys. So when we think we can't afford to be healthy, here's your numbers. We can't afford to not be healthy. So this talks a little bit deeper about children with chronic illness. So 1 in 10 children have asthma. 1 in 36 now are the rates affected by autism. Let's hopefully my audio stays. 33% of children are caused by it says 33% of diseases are caused by environmental issues. 1 in 6 children develop a developmental disability, and ADHD is the most common neurodevelopmental disorder that affects children. 1 in 10 children are affected by ADHD. 1 in 13 children have food allergies. And I think this number is even more now. So Rita, you might have more updated statistics. She's been really digging in with Dr. Zach Bush. So, and she's like the only one on this panel that is awesome enough to not have kids yet. And so she's our messenger of wealth of knowledge and putting all this beauty together. But yeah, the price we pay for chronic illness. So basically, unfortunately, the state of health in the US does not reflect the standard health of the child expected for a child living in one of the wealthiest countries in the world. So we are the wealthiest country in the world, and we are the sickest nation in the world. And our children are the largest sick population compared to any country across the entire world. We are failing our children. Absolutely failing our children, and it's very disproportionate. So the Journal of American Medical Association shows that children doubled from 12.8% in 1994 to 26.6% in 2006. So in just 10 years, the amount of people with chronic disease doubled, with low income, racial, and ethnic minority children being disproportionately affected. So again, here we see how income status is affecting health. And then we'll move on, and to put it into perspective, the National Institute of Health estimates that about 9 million Americans have cancer. 23 million Americans now have some type of autoimmune disorder. And juvenile diabetes has increased 23% just between 2001 and 2009. So we're seeing all these staggering statistics, and it's really, really heartbreaking. So I'm not going to go into all this, but there's a really great site here, and it's called Focus for Health. I really like this this organization, and it's this. They talk about Roundup and glyphosate and the environmental risks, and they believe, for the first time in U.S. history, it says the current generation of children are in worse health and have a shorter life expectancy than the previous generation. So our children will not live as long as us. That's terrifying. And they should expect more chronic illness and disability than their parents did at the same age. Children are more vulnerable than adults to environmental risk factors. The most prominent risk factors identified to date will fall in the categories of drugs, environmental chemicals, infectious agents, dietary factors, and other physical and physiological stressors. So the belief is it's GMOs, pharmaceuticals, toxins like glyphosate, and vaccinations. And just, this is not an anti-vax talk, it's just a pro-education talk. So I'm pro-educated choices, right? So these are some links for you, and the childhood cancer risks are extremely high. They have increased 27% since 1975 for kids under 19. Currently, leukemia and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is up 34%, and this is connected to the consumption of glyphosate. So they have been able to basically parallel, this Focus for Health has been able to parallel these increases in disease with our environmental toxins and our spraying of chemical pesticides on our foods. So I am so passionate about this topic. And so what we can do, here's the advocacy for consumers. So I'm going to stop my share here. So I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but I wanted to be the bearer of reality, and to see that just like one thing like asthma is costing $81.9 billion a year. That's insanity. So we have to be the change, you guys. I mean, it starts with, if you don't know how to be the change, it starts with us using our voice. It starts with us changing. We vote with our dollars every single time we buy something. If we demand organic, sustainable nutrition, it will be provided because our government runs on money, right? That's where the money is, or the actions follow the money. So right now we have lobbyists paying the government to support chemical pesticide farming, which is why we have so much pesticides in our food. And so we have to be a voice. We can sign petitions. That little link in there will actually help you sign a petition to remove glyphosate out of our food, and it'll pull up your local senator based on your location. So it'll find your senator and your mayor. And then I also started one for Minnesota to try to get pesticides out of our Minneapolis parks. We have to start with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. Apparently they are the mother hub for the other cities. And once I can get it through here, I think if everyone can find their local city mayor, and we're just gonna go, you guys. If they have enough people yelling at them and making noise and getting public about it, we will see change. And so I hope you will join me in that change. I hope you will be a voice with me. Check out my Facebook page. I have a link on there to sign the petition. Please not just sign it, share it. Share it not just on your page either, because Facebook blocks when you just share stuff. Like text people, email it. Like we need to get a couple thousand signatures at least. We started the petition officially last night after I had a conversation with a woman from the park board. And we have I think almost 200 signatures in less than 12 hours. So that's good. So let's just keep rolling, because I only have such a handful of a network. So I need all your support. I hope this was helpful, and I'm going to pass it to Rita.
Thank you so much, Carrie. That was incredibly helpful and just amazing to hear some of those facts and statistics. And I'm going to follow.
I can't hear you, Rita.
Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay. I was like, uh-oh. So yeah, thank you everyone for sharing your information. And I also just wanted to follow this up with a couple of statistics, and I promise I'm going to move into solutions and action steps for us. It's just really important to understand the gravity of where we're at so we can really take that inspired action. So the Center for Disease Control now states that over 50% of adults have a chronic disease, and all of them are on at least one medication, the average person on 4 medications or more. And Dr. Joel Warsh is a medical doctor, and he's seen numbers as high as 50% of our children are on some sort of medication or are dealing with some form of chronic disease. So as Carrie was stating, we're just in a really important time and place right now in history. And as she was speaking to, as far as the autism goes, the research, the most research or updated at MIT shows that actually and if we could just mute anyone that's coming off mute, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. So 1 in 2 children are expected to have autism by 2025 if we keep going in the direction that we're going. And this doesn't include all the other diseases, you know, that and such as cancer and such that Carrie was talking about. And just with that alone, we'd see a total collapse in our economy and a complete overwhelm in the medical system. So it's time for us to change this tide, and we can. We have all the resources that we need and the solutions that we need, and collectively we have the power to do so. So the problems that we're dealing with are a nutrient deficiency from a lack of exposure to foods that actually contain nutrient density. And as well, an over toxicity from exposures to chemicals and pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and insecticides, as we've been talking about. And side actually means to kill. So Zach Bush, who we've been discussing, he's a triple board certified physician. He's a medical doctor that has found that in his clinical practice, nutrition is more powerful of an agent to outpace chemotherapy. It outpaces chemotherapy's effects on stimulating the body's health against cancer. So nutrition is number 1, and it comes back to that soil health. And then a study out of Berkeley showed that they did a test group of participants, and they put them on an organic diet for just 2 weeks, and their exposure to the chemicals went down by 90% in 2 weeks. So diet really is key. When our bodies get overloaded with these chemicals, that's when we start to get sick, and that's when we start to see these chronic disorders or have a hard time overcoming such things as viruses and whatnot. So the Center for Environmental Health recently did a study, and they showed that 90% of families have glyphosate in their bodies, and kids have the highest levels in their systems. So as we were discussing, glyphosate is a widely used herbicide, and the World Health Organization has declared glyphosate as a probable carcinogen. Of the 137 million pounds of glyphosate that we spray in the US every year, 54% of that is in our public spaces, as Carrie was talking about. So even if we're choosing to eat organic, we're still being exposed unknowingly. And Mackenzie Feldman, I'll send you her research. She's the founder of the Herbicide Free Campus. She focuses on eliminating pesticides from schools and communities. And I want to share with you her top steps for getting these chemicals out of our green spaces. So step 1 is getting informed, which is what we're doing today. So Mackenzie has compiled a list on her website with the different case studies that proves glyphosate's toxicity. And she also has a list of the lawsuits that are happening against its use. So make sure you have these documents printed out and on hand when you're scheduling meetings with your local community members so you can share these resources with them. Step 2, find out who makes the decisions in your community. On her campus at Berkeley, it was the grounds manager. So if you're looking at a community park, it may be someone in the park and rec department, or it may be a member in your city council. Start out with who you can find at your local park and make some phone calls to schedule a meeting with the decision maker. Ask what chemicals are being used in your community and do research on them at the Pesticide Action Network database so you can come prepared to your meeting. Step 3, is building and maintaining a team, which is what we're all looking to do to work together in our local communities and abroad. So you want to start recruiting concerned stakeholders who want to get behind this movement with you. So this is parents talking to them at soccer practice, pet owners at the dog park because glyphosate is absorbed through their paws. And there's just a lot of people who are using green spaces who would be of interest to. So remember that this has the potential to save the lives of so many loved ones in your community, and start speaking about this conversation. One great thing to do is to organize local screenings of the need to grow and farmers' footprint in your community so others can become educated on the importance of this subject. And if you're a student, feel free to make announcements in your classes. And another really impactful thing is we can invite people who have already been impacted by glyphosate and have them share their story. So Lee Johnson shared his story, which helped to ban all pesticides and herbicides from every school in the state of Hawaii. And Lee Johnson developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma after being exposed to the herbicide as a school groundskeeper. He was the first person to bring Monsanto to court and won unanimously in August of 2018. So there's thousands of other cancer victims who are also suing Monsanto. So really build your team and have some bi-weekly meetings. And then step 4 is become a resource. So Mackenzie initiated stopping the use of chemicals in her campus by volunteering to pick weeds for 15 minutes with her team before their volleyball practice. And this was a solution because the groundskeeper didn't have the help or pick weeds on his own. You can really organize around creating organic gardens in our community spaces, which Mary was talking about how important that is, and in our schools. And gardens have proven to increase children's confidence, social and leadership skills, communication abilities, and lower levels of stress, ADD, ADHD, and expose them to a diversity of microbes that are necessary for health, as Mary was explaining. So Zach Bush discovered that the microbacteria and fungi that produce anti-cancerous medicinal compounds are actually found in our healthy soils. So the medicine is at our feet, and we just need that exposure to it on a daily basis. So it's pretty crazy how our history has unfolded. After World War II, Americans grew 40% of our food in our backyard victory gardens. But now if you fast forward today, 1 in 1,000% of food is grown in our backyards. 1 of 1,000%. And we've created a reliance on processed foods and mega farming, and our children have lost this connection to where their food comes from. And as we've learned, being in nature repopulates that gut microbiome, and then 90% of our serotonin is produced in the gut. 50% of our dopamine is produced in the gut. And then the other 40% of our dopamine is actually produced in our kidneys. So developing that relationship to nature and with our backyards directly influences the health and happiness through that unseen microfungi and bacteria that's found in our soils. So if we can increase the health and happiness of our children by having gardens and nature programs, why wouldn't we? So that's one thing that we can really move forward with. And teachers can give extra credit to students who help groundskeepers mulch, plant cover crops, weeding, and just being creative with finding solutions. So step 5 is spreading the word. Mackenzie was able to get the Berkeley campus chemical free because she wrote to the school paper, letting the community know what was happening, and then everyone rallied in support. So this is actually how she received a grant for Beyond Pesticides, and they come in and actually train our groundskeepers in alternative options to using chemicals. So that's step 5, just writing a letter to your local newspaper and getting that message out there. And then step 6 might be the most important. It's positive messaging. People have the right to feel angry that they're unknowingly being exposed to toxic chemicals. But remember that the groundskeepers are getting the most exposure, and they may not know the harm either. So whenever you're writing messages or creating flyers, be mindful that we want to invite people in And when you're talking to the groundskeepers, remember that there are friends and there are allies, and we need to work together, not against them, but with them to create creative solutions. So that positive messaging is vital. So, what we've learned is that the same things that are degrading our environment are degrading our health. And anytime we make a decision based on the health of our environment, in turn, we're going to have healthier children and a healthier population. So next time you make a decision, really ask yourself these 3 questions. Is it good for our air? Is it good for our water? Is it good for our soil? If not, then it's not good for us either. And we need to just adopt necessary changes or alternatives. And this includes in our businesses, in our daily business. So we have the power to transform this world together. And it really starts at those grassroots movements by working with our communities. And we'll send you those resources, and you can connect with Karri Drinkwine and her community in Minnesota. You can connect with Mary and I in Colorado and really get going in your local communities, and we'll provide you all the resources to really support that process. And now I just thank you so much for listening. I want to bring Mary back in because she's going to speak a little bit about our giveaway that we're doing. And so I'll pass that over to her.
Yay, thank you so much, Rita. That was a lot of really amazing information. A ton of amazing information has been provided today. So if you registered via the Eventbrite, you will get a follow-up email with all of this information. So don't feel like, whoa, how do I do all that? We'll give you notes and links and all that good stuff. And now for the really exciting part is we wanted to raffle off a Epigenius Kids. So this is our biodegradable packaging, and we wanted to give this to one listener on the call. And the beauty of the Epigenius Kids is it works with the epigenetics like I was talking about. It has like 24 of the top fruits and vegetables in it that have been scientifically studied to reduce cancer and various disease in the body. And it also has our amazing biomedic in it for our children. So Dave Sandoval is the inventor of biomedic, and it's something that we all work with, which helps to reduce glyphosate in the tissues of your body. So they did a minimal trial on it. It was a 6-week trial, and with everybody just taking one biomedic a day, which is in this, it's one capsule per serving. The participants reduced the glyphosate in their system by 75%. So this is a major solution for what we're talking about. So not only do we need to get the glyphosate out, but we also need to figure out active ways to get it out of our body. So we want to raffle this off to one of you guys. It's really amazing for your kids. I drink it on a daily basis as well. And like I said, it has the biomedic in it. This is like almost a $100 value bag, and it's our biodegradable packaging. So you can just peel this label off and stick it back in your garden. And our lucky winner today is Aparna. Am I saying that name correctly? Are you still on the call? Let's see if she's on. Otherwise, we'll pick another winner. Doesn't look like she's on. Okay, we'll pick another winner. Rita, will you?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for the delay there.
Okay, it's spinning.
1 second.
Okay. Center on.
Yeah, so Jessica Silverson, yay. You are the winner of our Epigenius Kids. And like I said, this is such an amazing thing to incorporate into your kids' daily diet. It's packed with omegas, packed with all the basic foundational nutrition, and everything is grown in regenerative soils. So you know that this is helping the earth, helping the soil, helping the plants, and in return, helping you and your family thrive. So Jessica, if you wanna, we know you well, so we'll just connect with you and I'll hand deliver you a package of that. So,
Hey, Mary.
Yeah, hey.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say I'm taking this as a sign that we really need to use this product, but I also want to say if anyone's on the call that's really struggling financially, I'd like to donate that to them because I know that I can afford it.
Okay. Is there anyone that wants to drop a 1 in the comment? Don't be, if you're really in need and could really use this for your family, that's super generous of you, Jessica. So if that's you and you're on this Zoom, you can drop a 1 in the comments. We will arrange that to make that happen. Thank you, Jessica. Okay.
Oops, sorry, Mary. 1 second.
And yes,
Okay, can you hear me?
toddlers can definitely take this. I would say my 7-month-old is just now starting to incorporate fruit, and after the fruit, this is one of the first things I'll introduce into his diet as well.
You just want to give them a smaller dose of that. So just depending on how small they are, you'd just give them like a quarter of a dose of like the normal amount. I learned that by mistake by giving Sonny too much one time. It just goes right through him. And then I wanted to add one more thing too. With everyone shared such amazing information, and I forgot to mention that really the health with our kids really starts with leading by example ourselves. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed, like where do I start? We do offer 30-day lifestyle transformations. And so when you start to take on this transformation for yourself and create good habits, your kids witness and see that. And then with the 30-day, you're going to establish really good foundation, and you can start adding those good things in with your children as you are with yourself, and then creating great habits moving forward. So it's a really beautiful program that we offer, and you can get in touch with whoever invited you to this to really share more on that. But starting with yourself is such a great way to help your family. Carrie, I can't hear you if you're trying to talk.
Okay, can you hear me now? Great, my computer's having some issues. I just wanted to offer one more little bit of something fun that we do with our kids to help them eat healthy. Because once our kids have developed taste buds for some of these foods, it can be a very difficult transition. And so fruits naturally kids love. So really focus on fruits. Your kids can't eat too much fruit, especially if it's organic. But like Mary Beth already mentioned, like get your kids in the garden, or even if you're just growing like some herbs in your kitchen sink, right? By your kitchen sink, help them get in the dirt, help them grow the vegetables and see the process and teach them about it. But one thing that we like to do is we have kid knives, so they can't like cut themselves. They're super safe. So, but they all sit at the counter when we meal prep. They do, like each kid is chopping something. That's one thing that we do regularly at dinner time, at mealtime. And then the second thing is once a week, we try to do, and usually it's Sundays, like an around the world dinner. And so we make something from each kind of category. Like tonight we're making cauliflower rice sushi rolls with avocado. And then we'll make like a Thai curry. And so we'll like pick different things. And it's a kind of a fun time to educate how other cultures eat. And then talking about why. So, I mean, it does take some time and some effort, but when you really get your kids involved and engaged in their food, then they start to see like the value, the color, the vibrancy that they feel. And then we're also educating them at the same time. So those are some of my favorite little tips and tricks is get kid knives, include them. Kids love helping. Like it just lights them up because they are included. And, you know, even my 2-year-old gets so excited when I just set her on my lap when I'm chopping something. So those are my advices there for parents. And then, you know, replacing desserts, like do a banana ice cream. Frozen banana and date makes an amazing ice cream. You can make avocado ice cream. There's tons of recipes if you look up on like Pinterest, like a plant-based ice cream. So you can really get into like just switching it out. Have coconut milk ice cream instead of cow's milk ice cream. Have a non-dairy hemp seed milk instead of a dairy milk. You know, there's lots of little things. Have coconut oil instead of butter. Your kids won't even notice these transitions. So these are things that you can do on your own without them knowing at all that will just incredibly enhance their health. And then last but not least, if you feel like really passionate like we do and this like really moved you, we welcome you to come chat with us about joining the Million Mom movement. I mean, we are really serious about changing the world and, you know, helping our children heal and building a sustainable income while we help our children heal. So come chat with us. We all love you so much. And this is just a very near and dear topic to all of us here. So thank you for giving your time to us.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. And be on the lookout for the replay and follow-up email, and just have a beautiful day.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much, you guys. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.